Thank you very much, David Levy, Children's Rights Council. Before we go to lunch, I'd like to know if I could ask Dr. Amy Baker if she could please come up to the podium for just a few minutes. I know a lot of people that may be here today may not have had the opportunity, the great pleasure of meeting one of the most important pioneers today in parental alienation syndrome. Please welcome Dr. Amy Baker.
Sorry, Dr. Baker, can you clarify a point you made last night, which I thought was, it seemed to be a very startling realization, and it was the difference between the classification of a real abused child and I'm not sure how to
the concept of the differential diagnosis. Okay. Well, the concept of a differential diagnosis is you're looking at the presentation. This is sort of from the perspective of a clinician and a judge. You have a child in front of you who says, you know, I hate this parent. Let's say mom is the targeted parent. I hate mom. I never want to see her again. She's a horrible, horrible person. I love dad. He's the best, and I want to be only with him. So your job is to try to differentiate, is this child's rejection due to legitimate fear of that parent? Is that an abusive parent, and the child is realistically responding to that and doesn't want a relationship with the parent for that reason? Or an alternative explanation is that the child's rejection of that parent is being engineered by the other parent. So those are just two plausible alternative explanations. It's either abuse or it's parental alienation. And the way that you can determine the difference is by looking at the pattern of behavior of the child, because kids who have been abused and are rejecting an abusive parent typically do not present with those 8 behavioral manifestations: the campaign of denigration, the weak, frivolous, absurd reasons, the borrowed scenarios, the absolute black-white thinking of worshiping one parent and demonizing the other. Kids who have been legitimately abused do not proudly, widely proclaim to the universe, you know, my parent abused me, and yay, I want to talk about it all the time. They have very, very different clinical presentations.
My question is, how do you decide, either as a targeted parent or as an attorney representing, when to take something back into court and actively pursue a change in custody, or just sit back and continue to do all the positive things that you've learned to do through this process? How do you know which is the right?
That's a good question, and I don't think I've studied that, so I don't know the answer. But I think, you know, partly you have to know the legal system in your area and what's the likelihood that the judge is going to be responsive. You know, if you know that this, you know, the judge you're going to get is not going to be helpful, it's going to make things worse, don't do it. If you think that it's going to aggravate the situation with your child, and you have some hope that if you don't do that, that you can establish a contact with your child, then you've got to go that way. We just don't know enough at the individual level. You're at these various forks in the road. Should I go with the legal, or should I just try to play it out with my kid and see if I can keep that connection? I wish I had the answer to that.
Dr. Baker, I'd like to just give Kerry Lind, family law attorney, an opportunity to also give his input here.
That's a question that I get with almost every client. And it's kind of like Nancy Reagan. When Nancy Reagan said, don't do something, that means you should go out and try it, right? So if you've got everybody in your organization, all your people saying, slow down, don't do, you want to challenge that. It's fact-specific. Certainly it's fact-specific. And you don't want to have a lawyer who's just come on make those decisions. You want to have somebody who's been there from the beginning, knows the lay of the land, and almost intuitively can say, that's the moment, now's the time. If you think about it too much, you get caught in all this stuff. It comes with experience, it comes with knowing, I don't know if you have a chance in your jurisdiction to know who the judges may be on a given day. You can check on that and find out 2 weeks from now but it's intuitive, in my experience. And you rarely come out of it worse off than you go in, other than you've lost some money.
I'd like anybody who is a targeted parent, just a targeted parent, that has a specific question about their child for Dr. Baker, please raise your hand if you're a targeted parent. Okay, I'm going to go this way. We're going to take the long road to get there. I see a lady sitting all the way back here. Sometimes the walk is worth the wait.
Dr. Baker, hi, my name is Tali, and I came from a very, very long way to be here, overseas. Very, very shortly, thank you. I have 4 children, 1 6-year-old with me that I managed to escape with from my home, 3 other children, 18, 16, 11-year-old, that are currently living with their father, severely alienated by their father. I have almost no contact with them at all. I am fighting for custody right now for the 11-year-old because the 18 and 16-year-old are so far gone, it's just impossible to do anything with them. My question is for the 11-year-old. Right now, in terms of the court, it has been proven unequivocally by 2 psychiatric reports that there is severe alienation going on by the father. However, there is nothing to be done about that.
Yeah, I've seen that before. I've read custody reports. This is the worst case. If I had a nickel for every time somebody said this is the worst case of alienation, I would be wealthy. But I've seen custody evaluations. This is the worst case of alienation. Conclusion, custody to the alienator. It's too late.
Exactly.
Well, one thing I do often recommend, and this sort of goes back to your point, an earlier question, if you are going to court, you should have an idea of what it is you're actually asking for and to have a backup plan. So if it's, if you do sort of make the case that it's alienation, then do you need to have an intervention? And if so, are you going to recommend this place or that place? There are psychologists around the country, and even in Canada, I know there's a group that's trying to get reconciliation interventions started. That's something you should know about, have it in your back pocket, know the name of it, have had conversations. Do they take cases from your area? Do they need a court order? Have that all lined up so that you actually have a plan in place, because it's not enough to win in court. You have to win something that's actually going to be implemented.
Just one short question. Is there any research, has there any research been done on severely alienated children who have, whose custody has gone back to the targeted parents, and any effects on that, any long-term effects on that?
No, I heard somebody say yes to some, okay. What I know is clinical reports from the folks who were doing this, who talk, there's 3 different sets of people I know who are doing this kind of work, and I hear the same thing over and over again. There's remarkable success in terms of the kids. Even the most adamantly, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you, I want nothing to do with you. Once you get him in that room with the targeted parent, and the alienating parent isn't in the building. They can't be in the room, they can't be in the waiting room, they can't be in the building. If they're out, literally just out of that space, the kid will soften up and reestablish a relationship, even with the parent that they claim to hate. Now, the issue I know from some people who were doing this up in Vermont is if they send the kid back to the alienating parent, if you go back to that shared custody too quickly, use the cult analogy. Can you take somebody out of a cult and give them exit counseling and have them realize the cult isn't right? You're not going to send them back to visit the cult leader, every other weekend. So there has to be some follow-up aftercare to ensure that the kids don't get sucked back into the alienation. Did I answer your question? I'm not sure there is one article written by somebody in San Francisco, and who actually has a program for reuniting kids with targeted parents, and he's written that up, and that's in a peer review article. You can just contact me afterwards, and I'll let you know.
Dr. Baker, I'm all the way on the other side of the room here to give this microphone to Mike to ask a question to targeted parent.
Thank you. Ooh, feels weird being on one of these. So my question is...
Welcome to my world.
Yeah, I can see that. I'm going to hold it a little lower. My question is, many of us in here probably don't have the best experience with courts, and so my question might come a little bit as an obtuse question, but here it is. If the alienating parent is behaving so egregiously and hurting the children so badly, has it ever made sense and has it ever been done that the targeted parent files a motion for the children to become wards of the state? And I hope people aren't going to hate me for asking that question.
Well, I think, isn't that the case that's going on right now in Toronto? The 18-year-old who wants his kids to be wards of the state because he wants to get them away from, he says, both parents, but there are people who think that maybe he's actually a spokesperson for the alienating dad. So that's the only case I know, and it's getting a fair amount of press because I think it is sort of a radical, a radical approach. But I don't know personally many cases. Does anybody do?
Hi there, I'm a targeted parent. I'm also a physician. I think this is fantastic that we're having this conference, and I think it's just really laudatory. I'm curious to know if you present at other conferences that are more specifically for the folks that we're all talking about really need this information, judges, family court attorneys, GALs, psychologists who work in this arena.
I'm throwing myself on them. I had to beg.
And how are you received?
Well, I called the New Jersey the Institute for Continuing Legal Education, and I begged them, you don't have to pay, I'll come, I'll give a talk, please, please, please. And after several months, they did let me give a talk, and then they hired me to come back and give a major training. So it's just getting the foot in the door. Once you're in there, and it was, the joke with the attorneys was, I said, well, now, none of you represent alienating parents, right? So I'm just, and they all sort of laughed. Because, we really do have to get to them. And I said, well, you have to think, at what point is vigorously advocating for your client participating in the abuse of a child? I want them to think about that.
Your daughter is not my client, your wife is my client.
Well, but I'm trying to raise them to a higher moral level. What can I say? Yeah. Okay, are we breaking? Are you taking?
We are. I'll tell you what. Because we're really at a premium for time that we have available, I'm just going to have one last question, and then we really do have to break for lunch. So, anyone else, again, who's a targeted parent has a question for Dr. Baker, please raise your hand. If it's about your child. Oh, okay.
And,
This gentleman in the back.
People email me all the time, and I'm not a clinician. I can't, do therapy with people, but I can sort of recommend resources, and I'm trying to create these support groups around the country. So if you don't get me now, you can just email me, and we can have a discussion.
All right, Dr. Baker. Neil Fabish, another targeted parent, has a question for you.
Dr. Baker, I am the former targeted parent of what I believe to be an adult child of PAS, and I was wondering, in terms of general information about possible support networks and clinical intervention, is that developed? Is there anywhere where an adult child
for an adult child of parental alienation? I would just say email me, because other people have asked me that question, and I'm not sure I can look into it. I have helped start internet support groups for targeted parents who, are so desperate to get some validation and some recognition and hand-holding and all of that. I haven't been sort of swarmed by adult children of parental alienation, but I can certainly look into that. So, and I'm going to say have a good lunch.